I wanted to ask you about a particular word, and I want to get your take on this particular word because it crops up occasionally, and that's the word esoteric. Is what you are sharing with us tonight esoteric knowledge that has been withheld from us, perhaps? Or is it not possible to hold or withhold this information?
As I mentioned, I have read very little on this subject. The reason is when I was going through this process, I wanted to make sure, since I knew nothing about metaphysics and nothing about Buddhism, Hinduism, and Eastern philosophy, I knew that all the information that was coming from within me. And I wanted to make sure that in no way was I corrupting that information. So I knew that if I went out and read a book by Thich Nhat Hanh or some other spiritual teacher, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, that it was possible for me to go into a state of samadhi later. And when I came out, I would have this awareness, and then I would not be able to tell, was this something that I had read in that book, or was it something that was from within?
Yeah.
So I got in the habit to never read anything. During that 2-year period that I mentioned earlier about when I was just sort of looking to see if I had lost my mind or not, all I would do was open up a book, and in that book there would be that exact verbatim, word for word, what I had written, and I went, okay, this is what Gandhi said. I feel okay with that, and I would close the book. So the word esoteric, I would not even know what the definition of that is. But I can answer your question about whether this can be withheld or not. I am not special. I am not some unusual circumstance or special being that has acquired all of this merit and now has been given this blessing from something outside of ourselves. This is within every single one of us. Every single person, every single being, every single entity has this within them. So it cannot be held from them because it is their very nature.
Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful answer. In the past, when avatars have been on the earth and people notice that there is something intrinsically empowered, they are in their knowingness, and they have access to realms that others don't. There is a tendency to lift them up and worship them.
Yes.
And you are not bashful about saying that this is your life experience, and you are living these keys, that you are abiding in this particular awareness. Do you find that people want to try to make themselves separate from you?
Yes, I do. And to be completely honest, it was one of my determining factors to stay in the cave for so long. I had traveled around for several years and saw all the gurus on the planet. I saw the Dalai Lama. I saw Sri Ravi Shankar. I saw Gangaji, Eckhart Tolle, every single teacher. And without fail, and spent time with them, extended periods of time, not just went and visited once. And without fail, every single group that was around these teachers did exactly what you said. They worshiped their teacher.
Yes.
And I knew that if people looked towards me, they would never look within.
Yep.
And I said, I'm not going to do that. I will never put myself in a position where people will look at me. So when I finally did come out of the cave and decided I was going to do this process, which wasn't the Mystic 7 group at all, I was just planning on finishing my second book, and I was getting a group of people together which would force me to compile my data and do the book. Since then, the groups have taken off, and it's just really very beautiful. But every single day that I am in front of people, remind them that I am not special, that I do not know something that they do not know, In fact, I remind them quite regularly, the Mystic Seven group that we have in Tyler, that we are not separate, and that in fact all I am is simply a thought within their own mind. That they are simply teaching themselves, and that there is this appearance that there is separation, but that I am truly within them, that I am not separate from them. And my only job that I can do is to keep reminding them this, that there is not something outside of them that is teaching, that it is them. It is their awareness. It is their knowledge.
Mm. If there's anyone on the call right now, just speak up. If you have a question for David Browning, just go ahead and speak up, and we'll receive you.
Hi, David. I'm Gail, and I'm sorry I'm late, but at least I'm getting to hear a little bit of what you're saying. I don't even know enough to ask a question, so if you could brief me a little bit, I might come up with one.
Well, what I would like to do is I'd like to go ahead and go back, since we have the opportunity, to a question that you asked about death. This is a really, really strong driving force in our life. And whereas I don't want to go into the total answer, because like I said, we'll do that when we do the Mystic Seven here in Austin, I would like to touch base on what manifestation is. The three foundation principles that I introduce before we do the Mystic Seven groups is, the first one is there is a source, and that's very, very simple. You know, people believe that there is an energy, a nature, a force that exists, and they give it all sorts of names. They call it Brahman or Yahweh, Buddha, Allah, God. Others refer to it as our higher power or the self or consciousness. But whatever name we give it, we all agree that there's this force, there's this thing that's outside of us that's greater than us. So there is this source. That's number one. Number two, it is self-aware. And this is self-evident because we are the source and we are aware. We perceive everything, unfortunately, as delusional as we do outside of ourselves, which it's not. But we do perceive, and therefore we have consciousness. We have thought. And then the third one is manifestation. This is the big stumbling block for everybody. And that is because everybody believes that manifestation is something outside of themselves, that manifestation is something outside of God, that is something outside of the source. And actually, there are within the source no dimensions of time and space. There are no physical, ethereal, or spiritual realities at all. Everything in the perceivable and non-perceivable universe is simply an infinite collection of thought and experiences that are abiding within the mind of God. An infinite collection of thought and experiences that are abiding within our own mind. And what create these illusory realities are the varying states of consciousness that we as the source are currently abiding in. And so what I use are states of consciousness. You as the source at this moment are in a state of consciousness where you believe you are either conducting, participating, or listening to a radio show. This is the state of consciousness that you as the source are currently abiding in, that you are perceiving. But you are also abiding and perceiving an infinite number of experiences and realities. It's just the one that you are currently perceiving.
Sure.
And so what happens is we shift from state to state to state. And so when you go from a state of consciousness and a delusional state of consciousness where you've placed the veil before yourself so that you can have experience of pain and suffering, love and joy, and everything else, what you do is then shift from that state of consciousness into a state of consciousness where you believe you're sick. And then you shift to a state of consciousness where you believe you have died and are in the astral plane. And then you shift to a state of consciousness where you are being reborn or reincarnated and you believe that there is a birth. But these aren't actually happening. These are just illusory thoughts within your own mind. These are just shifting states of consciousness.
the delusions that we're all having, that we're separate and we each have these individual bodies that we can't see past unless we're identified with the whole source, is it possible for the individual to help one another dispel delusions? I keep begging for that help, and
Yes.
but I'm not sure if I'm asking for something that's realistic.
To answer the last part of the question, do we have a responsibility? It's very, very tricky. It gets into actually the sixth of the Mystic Seven, which is neither affirmation nor negation, because the answer is both yes and no.
Okay.
The answer is no, we do not have responsibility, because basically everything is the source. And so it is abiding in its perfect state of consciousness at any given point. Now, the opposite of that is that because one of the beautiful manifestations of the source is simply another game which we call enlightenment, which is no different than being a trash collector or a paramedic or a doctor or a teacher. It is simply another game that we of the source have decided to play. Then it is our responsibility that those that come before us, if we have the skill and if we have the knowledge and if we have the compassion to guide them, not to teach them, but to guide them to their own inner self, then yes, we do have that responsibility. But again, remember, it's a yes and a no answer.
Gail, thank you so much for your participation. I love you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
David, I wanted to ask, how can we get your book? Tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, it actually comes in 3 different versions. The first version is a black and white text-only softcover. I also have a black and white text-only hardcover. And the third version is a full color, 8 by 10. It's sort of like a coffee table modern Tao Te Ching. It's full of koans and sutras, poetry, and salsangs. And they're on individual pages rather than the black and white where there's just dozens of them on each page. Each individual page has its own sutra, its own koan, and a beautiful, beautiful illustration that helps support that knowledge that's associated with that and help with the contemplation. All 3 of those books, you can contact us on my website at www.retreat2silence, and that's the number 2. So it's RETREAT, the number 2, and then silence.com. They're beautiful books, and you would definitely spend the rest of your life studying the material in there.
Well, I can attest to that because I've had the pleasure of leafing through it. The name of the book is Seeing Through the Eyes of God, and the book is incredibly impactful. The magnitude of the presence of this book and the words on the pages and the accompanying images are just breathtaking. And so I would wish that all of you could just hold it and look at it right this very minute because it is spectacular. I promised everyone that we would also just really go into the description of your incredible Samadhi Retreat and Meditation Center. Tell us a little bit about that because we've got a little bit more time if you can hang on for about 5 more minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. This is out in East Texas. I have been there, and I had an absolutely superb time at the grand opening. And, tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, this was one of those beautiful things that just manifests itself. It has a huge 1,500 square foot great room that we use. It holds 30 people with hardwood floors for meditation. We have 2 or 3 rooms where people can stay. We have another small meditation room. It's on 64 acres of beautiful ranch land with wooded acreage, a 7-acre lake. And we just held our first silent retreat last weekend, I believe it was, We kept it very small because it was the first event that we held there. 10 people came, stayed in silence. We worked on the first principle of the Mystic Seven, which is the source, and everybody had an amazing time. They're all coming back for the next silent retreat on September 13th and bringing their friends. This time we're going to accept 20 people, and it's just a beautiful facility, and Don and I are having an amazing time out there.
And if people want to find out more about that, they can go to retreat2, retreat2silence.com. And I also wanted to make sure that that you've got some new friends on your Facebook. If you want to go to David Browning's Facebook page, that is Samadhi, that's S as in Sam, SAMADHI, Samadhi Retreat and Meditation Center. David, have we covered everything except eternity?
Maybe not everything, but we've covered a lot.
We really have, and it's just been so wonderful. So I want to just give you the last moments to allow people to hear your heart about what you know in your knowingness about what they will receive when they come to the Mystic Seven.
The driving force, the most important thing to me, is that people are able to actually have this experience. So everything that I do, every practice that I teach, every word that I speak, is so that people can go into that state of silence and have this experience and become aware that all of this abides within them.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, my friend, we really are doing this, and I'm looking forward to being with you. I do want to just bring out a couple of things that I'm reading on the chat here. We had referred to David Browning's book, Seeing Through the Eyes of God. It is also available through the on your computer, and it's a PDF version, and you can go to the website retreat2silence.com. That's the numeral 2, retreat2silence.com. That's $25. So if you can't swing the big coffee table, big, humongous thing, then $25 will get you that PDF download. And the Facebook is facebook.com/Samadhi Retreat. /Samadhi Retreat. Well, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on Unzipping Reality, The Third Awakening. I'm Leah LaChapelle. Bye-bye, everyone.